Disclaimer.
The gold on his wrist couldn't save him.
My name is Deandra Grace Washington. I am 37 years old. I died for 9 minutes on November 3, 2023 in Houston, Texas.
For 8 years, I believed a lie wrapped in scripture. Before I begin, please subscribe so more people can hear testimonies like this. I believed that my faithfulness would be rewarded with financial miracles. I believed that if I just gave more, prayed harder, sowed bigger seeds, God would finally open the windows of heaven and pour out blessings I could not contain. I believed my pastor when he stood on that stage every Sunday morning, sweat dripping down his face, gold Rolex catching the light, shouting into the microphone, "Your breakthrough is in your giving. Sow your seed and watch God move." I believed him because I was desperate. I was a single mother working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. My husband had walked out 3 years earlier, leaving me with 2 daughters, a stack of unpaid bills, and a heart so broken I did not know how to put it back together. I worked as a certified nursing assistant at Houston Methodist, wiping down patients, changing bedpans, holding the hands of dying strangers while my own life fell apart. At night, I stocked shelves at a Kroger on the south side, my feet aching, my back screaming, my mind numb. I was drowning, and the Greater Covenant Worship Center felt like the only lifeboat in sight. It was a massive church, 15,000 members strong, with screens the size of billboards and a praise team that sounded like they had been plucked straight from a recording studio. Pastor Roderick Collins was the kind of man who commanded a room the moment he walked into it. Tall, well-dressed, confident, with a voice that could make you believe anything. He preached about abundance, about favor, about the power of seed sowing. He said God wanted us rich, healthy, victorious. He said poverty was a curse we could break with our obedience. And I believed him. Every Sunday, I sat in the 3rd row from the back, hands trembling, tears streaming down my face, listening to him declare promises over my life. This is your season. Your breakthrough is here, but you have to activate it with your giving. And I did. I gave. I gave when I should not have. I gave my tithe even when the rent was late. I gave my first fruits offering even when my daughters ate cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row because I could not afford anything else. I gave a special love offering when Pastor Collins said God told him we needed to sow into the building fund for a new sanctuary. I gave because I thought God was testing me. I gave because I thought my faith was being measured by my sacrifice. I gave because I believed the miracle was just one more offering away. But it never came. The bills kept piling up. The eviction notices kept showing up on my door. My car broke down twice in 6 months, and I could not afford to fix it. I took the bus to work in the rain, my scrubs soaked, my body exhausted, my spirit shattered. And every Sunday, I would sit in that church and wonder what I was doing wrong. Why was God not blessing me? Why was everyone else testifying about their breakthroughs while I was falling further behind? I thought the problem was me. I thought my faith was too weak. I thought I was not praying hard enough. I thought maybe I had some hidden sin God was punishing me for. I never once questioned the teaching. I never once questioned Pastor Collins. I just kept giving, kept believing, kept hoping. Deep down, something inside me was screaming that this was wrong. But I silenced it. I silenced it because I needed to believe. I needed to believe that my suffering had a purpose, that my sacrifice meant something, that God was going to show up and turn everything around. I needed to believe because if I stopped believing, I had nothing left. So I gave my last $200 on a Sunday in October. It was supposed to go toward my daughter's school supplies, notebooks, pencils, backpacks. But Pastor Collins stood on that stage and said, God is looking for someone bold enough to sow a seed of faith today. He is looking for someone who will step out on the water. If you want God to move in your life, you have to move first. And I moved. I walked down that aisle, my hands shaking, my heart pounding, tears blurring my vision. I placed that money in the offering bucket and whispered, "Please, God, please." I went home that night and told my daughters we would get their supplies next week. They did not complain. They never did. They just nodded and went to their room. And I sat on the edge of my bed and cried until I had nothing left. November 3, 2023, started like every other day. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to the sound of my alarm buzzing in the darkness. My body ached before I even stood up. I had worked a double shift the day before, 16 hours on my feet, and my lower back felt like someone had driven nails into my spine. But I could not afford to call in sick. I needed every dollar. So I dragged myself out of bed, put on my scrubs, kissed my sleeping daughters on their foreheads, and walked out into the cold Houston morning. The bus was late. It always was. I stood at the stop, shivering, watching my breath fog in the air, thinking about the electric bill that was overdue and the notice that said they would disconnect service if I did not pay by Friday. I had 3 days. I had no idea where the money was going to come from. I thought about asking my sister for help, but she had her own struggles. I thought about picking up another shift, but I was already working 6 days a week. I thought about praying, but honestly, I was tired of praying. I was tired of asking and not receiving. I was tired of believing and not seeing. I was tired. The bus finally came, and I climbed on, found a seat near the back, and closed my eyes. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, the driver was calling out my stop. I stumbled off, half awake, and walked the 2 blocks to the hospital. My shift started at 6. It was the same routine. Check in, get my assignments, move from room to room, smile, comfort, clean, repeat. By the time my shift ended at 2 in the afternoon, I was running on fumes. I had 4 hours before my grocery store shift started at 6. I thought about going home to rest, but I knew if I sat down, I would not get back up. So I stayed. I sat in the hospital cafeteria, ate a dry sandwich I had packed from home, and stared at the table, my mind blank, my soul numb. At 5:30, I left the hospital and started driving to the store. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the highway. Traffic was heavy. I merged onto the 610 loop, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, my eyelids heavy. I remember thinking I just needed to make it through one more shift. Just one more. Then I could go home. Then I could sleep. I never saw the truck coming. It happened so fast. One moment, I was in the center lane, my mind wandering, my body on autopilot. The next moment, there was a screech of tires, a flash of headlights, and then impact. The sound was deafening. Metal crunching, glass shattering. My body jerked violently to the side, my seatbelt digging into my chest, my head slamming against the window. The world spun. I remember the smell of burning rubber. I remember the airbag exploding in my face. I remember the taste of blood in my mouth. And then everything went silent. My car had been hit on the driver's side by a pickup truck going at least 60 miles an hour. The driver had run a red light. He was drunk. I found that out later. But in that moment, all I knew was pain. Sharp, stabbing pain in my abdomen. I looked down and saw blood spreading across my scrubs. I tried to move, but my body would not respond. I heard sirens in the distance. I heard voices shouting. I heard someone say, "She's losing a lot of blood. We need to move now." Hands pulled me from the wreckage. I was lifted onto a stretcher. The sky above me was darkening, stars beginning to appear. I remember thinking how strange it was that I could see stars in Houston. I remember wondering if my daughters knew where I was. I remember whispering their names. And then I was in an ambulance, the ceiling lights blinding, a paramedic pressing something against my side, his voice urgent but distant. "Stay with me. Stay with me. What's your name?" I tried to answer, but the words would not come. Everything was fading. By the time I reached Ben Taub Hospital, I had already lost too much blood. They rushed me into surgery. I remember the operating room lights. I remember the cold table beneath my back. I remember a mask being placed over my face and someone telling me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7. And then my heart stopped. Clear, direct, and give realistic steps and make us feel every story like human. January 9th. I felt the pain disappear first. Not slowly, not gradually, just gone, like someone had flipped a switch and turned off every nerve in my body. The pressure in my chest vanished. The stabbing sensation in my abdomen stopped. For a moment, I thought they had given me something for the pain. Some kind of drug that finally kicked in. But then I realized I could not feel the operating table beneath me anymore. I could not feel the weight of my own body. I opened my eyes, and I was floating. I was above the operating table, looking down at myself. My body lay still, lifeless, surrounded by doctors and nurses in blue scrubs moving with frantic precision. One of them had his hands pressed against my chest, compressing it in steady rhythms. Another was adjusting an IV line. A third was calling out numbers I did not understand. The heart monitor beside the table showed a flat green line, and the sound it made, that long, continuous tone. I will never forget it. It was the sound of death. I watched them work on my body, and I felt nothing. No fear, no panic, just a strange, detached curiosity. I saw the blood-soaked towels piled on the tray beside the surgeon. I saw the machines beeping and flashing. I saw one of the nurses glance at the clock on the wall. And I realized, that is me down there. That is my body. But I am here, watching. I tried to speak, to tell them I was okay, that I was right here, but no sound came out. My voice did not exist in this place. I reached out toward one of the doctors, but my hand passed through his shoulder like smoke through air. He did not flinch. He did not notice. I was there, but I was not. The voices in the room sounded muffled, like I was hearing them underwater. I could make out fragments of sentences. We are losing her. Push another round of EPI. Come on, come on. Their movements became more urgent, more desperate, and I just floated there, watching, feeling strangely calm. Then I felt it, a pull, not physical, not something I could resist with my hands or my strength. It was deeper than that. It came from inside me, from some place I did not know existed. It was like gravity had reversed, and instead of holding me to the earth, it was dragging me downward. Downward into something I could not see. I looked away from my body, and that is when I saw it. Darkness. Not the darkness of a room with the lights turned off. Not the darkness of closing your eyes. This was different. This was a darkness that felt alive. Thick, heavy, suffocating. It was spreading across the operating room like smoke, creeping along the floor, rising up the walls, swallowing the light. And it was pulling me toward it. I tried to resist. I tried to grab onto something, anything, but there was nothing to hold. The pull grew stronger. My spirit, my soul, whatever I was in that moment, began to descend. Slowly at first, then faster. The operating room faded above me. The sounds of the doctors grew distant. The light dimmed, and I fell into the darkness. The descent felt endless. I could not see my hands in front of me. I could not see anything. But I could feel it. I could feel the temperature changing. The air around me, if you could call it air, grew warmer. Then hot, then unbearably hot. It was not the heat of summer or the heat of a fire. It was the kind of heat that presses down on you, that makes it hard to breathe, that feels like it is coming from inside you and outside you at the same time. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I was falling, and I did not know when it would stop. And then it did. My feet touched the ground. Not solid ground, not dirt or concrete. It felt like stone, but it was wrong. It was too hot. I looked down, and even though the darkness was overwhelming, I could see faint cracks in the ground beneath me, glowing red like dying embers. The stone looked charred, blackened, as if it had been burning for centuries. Smoke rose from the cracks in slow, lazy spirals, carrying a smell that made my stomach turn. Sulfur, ash, something rotting. I stood there, frozen, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The heat was unbearable. It radiated up from the ground, pressing against my chest, squeezing my lungs. I felt like I was being cooked from the inside out. Sweat that was not sweat poured down my face. My throat burned, my eyes stung, and the smell, God, the smell. It was the smell of something burning that should not burn. Flesh, bone, hope. I took a step forward, and that is when I heard them. The cries, distant at first, faint, but growing louder. They were not screams of pain, not the kind you hear in a hospital or an emergency room. These were different. These were the sounds of regret, of loss, of something broken beyond repair. Sobbing, wailing, voices calling out names, voices begging for mercy, voices repeating the same words over and over again, like a prayer that would never be answered. Please, please, I did not know. I gave everything. Where is my reward? You promised, you promised. The darkness around me began to shift. Shadows moved independently, without source, without reason. They were not cast by anything. They just existed, crawling along the ground, rising up like figures, watching. I could feel eyes on me, even though I could not see them. The weight of it pressed down on my chest, making it harder and harder to breathe. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. I took another step, my legs trembling, and that is when I saw the first one. A figure, kneeling on the ground, hands covering their face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I could not see their features clearly. The darkness and smoke obscured everything. But I could feel their pain. It radiated from them like heat from a flame. I moved closer, my heart pounding, and I heard them whisper, barely audible. I believed the promise. I sowed the seed. Where is it? Where is it? My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. Not personally, but I knew the tone. The desperation. The confusion. It was the same voice I had used 1,000 times, sitting in that church, hands raised, tears streaming, wondering why God had not moved yet. Wondering why the breakthrough had not come. I stepped back, my hands trembling, and that is when I saw more of them. Dozens, hundreds, kneeling, sitting, standing with their heads bowed. All of them repeating the same phrases. All of them are trapped in the same cycle of regret. They were not burning. There were no flames consuming them. But the torment was there. I could see it in the way they moved, in the way they clutched at themselves, in the way they could not stop repeating those words. I gave everything, you said, if I believed. Where is my blessing? I felt tears sting my eyes. These were not evil people. These were not murderers or monsters. These were people like me. People who had believed. People who had trusted. People who had given their last dollars, their last hope, their last breath, believing that God would come through. And He had not, or so they thought. I wanted to reach out to them, to tell them it was going to be okay, but I knew it was not true. Nothing about this place felt like it would ever be okay. I turned away, my chest tight, my throat burning, and that is when I saw them. The line. A long, single-file line of men and women standing in the distance, separated from the masses. They were dressed differently, not in rags or torn clothing. They wore fine suits, expensive dresses, polished shoes. Their clothes looked pristine, untouched by the smoke and ash that filled the air. But their faces told a different story. Agony, absolute, unrelenting agony. I moved closer, my legs barely holding me up, and that is when I saw what surrounded them. Images, floating above their heads like screens, like memories projected into the air. I saw private jets with gleaming white wings. I saw mansions with marble columns and infinity pools. I saw luxury cars, Bentleys and Rolls-Royces, parked in circular driveways. I saw stages, massive stages with lights and cameras and thousands of people clapping, shouting, hands raised in worship. And I saw money, piles of it, stacks of $100 bills. Offerings being collected in golden buckets. Checks being written. Credit cards being swiped. These were not victims. These were the ones who had taken. I stepped closer to the first figure in the line, my heart racing, and my breath caught in my throat. I knew him. Pastor Roderick Collins. My pastor. He stood frozen, his mouth open as if he were mid-sermon, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide, unblinking, staring at something I could not see. Around him, the images continued to play. I saw his church. I saw his book signings. I saw his television appearances, his perfectly white smile, his confident voice declaring blessings over millions. I saw his Bentley, the same one I had seen parked outside the church every Sunday. I saw his mansion in River Oaks, the one he said God had blessed him with. And surrounding him, pressing in from all sides, were faces. Thousands of them, faceless souls, reaching out, crying, pleading. You promised us. You said if we gave, God would bless us. You said our breakthrough was coming. Where is it? Where is it? But Pastor Collins could not answer. He stood there, trapped, his mouth open, his eyes filled with horror, watching the consequences of every word he had spoken, every promise he had made, every dollar he had taken. I stumbled backward, my legs giving out, and I fell to my knees. This could not be real. This could not be happening. But it was. I looked down the line and saw more of them. Faces I recognized from television. Prophets who sold anointed prayer cloths for $1,000. Apostles who declared that God had told them to buy private planes so they could spread the gospel faster. Bishops who lived in gated communities while their congregations struggled to pay rent. All of them here. All of them surrounded by the souls they had deceived. All of them trapped in the wealth they had preached. I could not breathe. My chest heaved, but no air came. Tears poured down my face, hot and endless. I pressed my hands against the burning ground, trying to steady myself, but everything was spinning. And that is when I felt it. A presence. Not like the shadows. Not like the figures in torment. This was different, massive, holy, undeniable. I did not see a body. I did not see a face. But I felt it standing beside me, towering over me, filling the space with a weight that made everything else seem small. And then it spoke, not out loud, not with sound, but I heard it in my soul. They took my name and turned it into merchandise. The voice was calm, but it shook me to my core. They built empires on the backs of the broken. They fed themselves while my sheep starved. I could not move. I could not speak. I could only listen. Every dollar stolen in my name will be repaid in eternity. Every soul deceived will testify against them. They promised blessings I never spoke. They sold hope I never gave. I looked up at Pastor Collins, still frozen, still surrounded by the souls he had led astray, and I understood. This was not cruelty. This was justice. The presence remained beside me, and I could not bring myself to look directly at it. I did not need to. I could feel its authority, its holiness, pressing down on me like a weight I could barely endure. My whole body trembled, or maybe it was my soul. I did not know the difference anymore. I stared at Pastor Collins, at the images still hovering around him, at the faces of the people crying out for answers he could not give. And I felt something break inside me. Anger, not at him, not yet, at myself, because I had been one of those faces. I stood in that church, hands raised, tears streaming, believing every word he said. I had given money I did not have. I had sacrificed for my daughters because I thought God was testing my faith. I had trusted him, completely, blindly, and he had lied. The voice spoke again, and this time it felt like it was speaking directly to me. I called them to preach the cross. They preached comfort. I told them to die to themselves. They taught others to live for themselves. They will drink the cup they poured for millions. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask why. Why did you let this happen? Why did you let him deceive us? Why didn't you stop him? But before I could form the words, the presence turned its attention fully toward me. And everything changed. The images around Pastor Collins faded. The cries of the souls grew distant. The heat, the smoke, the suffocating darkness, all of it pulled back, just enough for me to see something new. Myself. I saw myself standing in the third row from the back at Greater Covenant Worship Center. I saw myself singing with my hands raised, tears streaming down my face, my voice cracking as I sang about breakthrough and victory. But I was not looking at the cross. I was not looking at Jesus. I was looking at Pastor Collins. I was looking at the screens. I was looking at the testimonies of people who said they sowed a seed and got a new car, a new house, a new job. I was worshiping the promise, not the promiser. The scene shifted. I saw myself sitting at my kitchen table, my Bible closed, dusty, untouched. I saw myself scrolling through my phone, watching sermon clips on YouTube, all of them about abundance, about wealth, about seed sowing. I saw myself skipping the book of Matthew, skipping the Sermon on the Mount, skipping the parts where Jesus talked about taking up your cross, about denying yourself, about following him even when it cost you everything. I had cherry-picked my faith. I had chosen the parts that made me feel good and ignored the parts that made me uncomfortable. The scene shifted again. I saw the Sunday I gave my last $200. I saw myself walking down that aisle, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I saw Pastor Collins standing on the stage, his arms wide, his voice booming. God is looking for someone bold enough to sow a seed of faith today. And I saw myself place that money in the bucket. But I also saw what I did not see that day. I saw my daughters sitting at the kitchen table the next morning, using old, broken crayons because I could not afford new school supplies. I saw the look in my oldest daughter's eyes when I told her we would get them next week. She did not complain. She just nodded. But I saw the disappointment. The quiet acceptance that Mom was always struggling, always stressed, always one bill away from breaking. I had sacrificed their needs for a promise that was never real. The scene shifted once more. I saw myself talking to my coworker, the one who had left Greater Covenant and started attending a small church across town. I saw the judgment in my eyes as I told her, "You just did not have enough faith. You gave up too soon." I saw the hurt on her face as she walked away. I had become what I followed. Judgmental, blind, arrogant in my supposed faithfulness. The presence spoke again, softer this time, but no less convincing. "You were not serving me, Deandra. You were serving your desperation. And they knew it, and they used it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I collapsed fully onto the ground, my hands pressed against the burning stone, sobs tearing from my chest. I could not stop them. I could not control them. Every memory, every moment, every decision I had made came crashing down on me all at once. I had been so blind. I had thought I was faithful. I had thought I was obedient. I had thought I was doing what God wanted. But I had never once asked Him what He actually wanted. I had never opened my Bible and read it for myself. I had never prayed for wisdom or discernment. I had just believed. I believed what I was told. I believed what made me feel hopeful. Believed what promised me an escape from my suffering. And in doing so, I had walked right into a trap. I looked up, my vision blurred by tears, and I saw Pastor Collins again. But this time, I did not see him as a villain. I saw him as a man who had made the same choice I had made, only on a much larger scale. He had chosen comfort over truth. He had chosen wealth over obedience. He had chosen to build a kingdom for himself instead of pointing people to the King. And now, he was paying for it. But so was I not in the same way. Not with the same consequences. But I had been walking the same path. I had been serving the same God. The God of comfort. The God of financial breakthrough. The God of blessings without sacrifice. And that God did not exist. The presence shifted, and I felt something I did not expect. Compassion. Not condemnation. Not rejection. Compassion. The voice spoke again, and this time it was almost tender. "You were deceived, Deandra. But deception does not have to be your end. You have seen the truth. You have seen the cost. And you will return." I lifted my head, my breath catching. "Return? You will tell them. You will warn them. You will speak the truth I gave you, not the lie they sold you." I shook my head, my voice finally breaking free, raw and broken. I cannot. I do not know how. You do not need to know how. You only need to obey." The images around me began to fade. The cries of the souls grew quieter. The heat began to lessen, just slightly. But before everything disappeared, the presence showed me one more thing. I saw millions of people, sitting in churches just like Greater Covenant, watching sermons on their phones, sending money to ministries that promised miracles. All of them desperate, all of them hurting, all of them believing the same lie I had believed. And I saw where they were headed. Not all of them, but so many, too many. They were walking toward the same darkness I was standing in. And they had no idea. The voice spoke one final time, and it was not a suggestion. It was a command. "Warn them." And then the ground beneath me gave way. I did not fall this time. I was pulled upward, violently. The heat vanished. The smoke cleared. The cries faded into silence. A light exploded through the darkness, so bright it burned even though I had no eyes to close. I felt a hand, strong and scarred, grab hold of me and yank me upward with a force that felt like my spirit was being torn from that place. I shot upward, faster and faster, the darkness shattering like glass around me. And then I felt it. Pain. Real, physical, unbearable pain. My chest exploded with pressure. Something hard slammed against my ribs, over and over again. Air rushed into my lungs like fire, burning my throat, filling my chest. I gasped, choking, my body convulsing. The sound returned. Voices. Machines beeping. Someone shouting, "We have a pulse. We have a pulse. She's back. She's back." My eyes flew open. Blinding white lights. Faces in surgical masks leaning over me. Hands pressing against my chest. The smell of antiseptic and blood. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a strangled gasp. One of the doctors leaned closer, his voice urgent but relieved. Stay with us, Deandra. Stay with us. You're okay. You're back. But I was not okay. I was alive, but I was not the same. I had seen the truth, and I could never unsee it. My body was back, but my soul had been forever changed, and the warning I carried was heavier than anything I had ever known. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and stale air. My throat was raw, like I had swallowed glass. My abdomen throbbed with a deep, aching pain that pulsed with every breath. Tubes ran from my arms to machines that beeped in steady rhythm beside my bed. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly, and I could hear voices in the hallway, distant and muffled. I tried to sit up, but my body would not cooperate. Every muscle screamed in protest. I fell back against the pillow, gasping, my chest heaving. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening when she saw me awake. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, rushing to my bedside. "You are awake. You are really awake." She pressed a button on the wall, and within seconds, a doctor entered, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Ms. Washington," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You gave us quite a scare. You were clinically dead for 9 minutes. We did not think we were going to get you back." 9 minutes. The words echoed in my mind, but they felt hollow. Because those 9 minutes felt like an eternity. Those 9 minutes had shown me things I could never forget. Things I could never say. The doctor checked my vitals, asked me questions I barely heard, and told me I was lucky to be alive. But I did not feel lucky. I felt heavy, like I was carrying a weight that did not belong to my body but to my soul. My daughters came to see me that afternoon. They walked into the room holding hands, their eyes red from crying, their faces pale and scared. My oldest, Janae, ran to my bedside and grabbed my hand, her small fingers squeezing mine so tightly it hurt. "Mama," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We thought you were gone." I tried to smile, tried to reassure her, but all I could do was cry. I pulled her close, my youngest, Amara, climbing onto the bed beside me, and I held them both as tightly as my broken body would allow. "I am here," I whispered. "I am here." But even as I said it, I knew I was not the same person who had left them 3 days ago. The hospital released me a week later with instructions to rest, to take my medication, to follow up with my primary care doctor. But rest was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The darkness, the heat, the cries. Pastor Collins stood frozen, surrounded by the souls he had deceived. And the voice, that presence, the command that still echoed in my spirit. "Warn them." I did not go back to the Greater Covenant Worship Center. I could not. The thought of walking through those doors, of sitting in that sanctuary, of hearing Pastor Collins preach about sowing seeds and reaping harvests made my stomach turn. I know the truth now. I had seen where that gospel led, and I could not be part of it anymore. 2 weeks after I was discharged, I received a call from one of the church leaders, Sister Monica, asking why I had not been back. "We have been praying for you, Deandra," she said, her voice sweet but probing. "Pastor Collins wanted me to reach out. He said he has been thinking about you. We miss you." I held the phone to my ear, my hands trembling, and I took a deep breath. "I am not coming back," I said quietly. There was a pause. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone shifting. "Why not? Did someone offend you?" "No," I said. I cannot be part of it anymore." "Part of what?" I closed my eyes, and the words came out before I could stop them. "The lie." Another pause. Longer this time. "Deandra," she said, her voice tight. "I do not know what you have been through, but you need to be careful about speaking against the anointed. Pastor Collins is a man of God. You are letting the enemy confuse you." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her what I had seen. But I knew she would not believe me. So I just said, "I have to go," and hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, and I realized something. No one was going to believe me unless I showed them the truth. And the truth was in the Bible I had been ignoring for 8 years. So I started reading. I opened my Bible for the first time in what felt like forever, and I started from the beginning of the New Testament. I read the words of Jesus. Not the verses Pastor Collins quoted. Not the ones about abundance and overflow. I read the hard ones. The ones I had skipped. Matthew chapter 16 verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Luke chapter 9 verse 23. And he said to all, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." Matthew chapter 6 verse 19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, realizing how far I had strayed. I had been chasing treasure on earth. I had been following a gospel that promised me everything here and now. But Jesus never promised that. He promised a cross. He promised suffering. He promised that following him would cost me everything. And I had rejected that message because it was too hard. The transformation did not happen overnight. It was slow, painful, like peeling back layers of a wound that had been covered for too long. I started attending a small church in 3rd Ward, a neighborhood church that met in a rented gym with folding chairs and a pastor who wore jeans and preached from a worn-out Bible. There were no screens, no light shows, no hype, just the word, plain, honest, unfiltered, and it wrecked me. Every sermon felt like it was aimed directly at my heart. The pastor, a man named Elder Thomas, preached about repentance, about holiness, about the cost of discipleship. He did not promise breakthroughs. He did not ask for seed offerings. He just opened the Bible and taught it, line by line, verse by verse. I cried through almost every service, because I realized how much I had missed, how much I had been robbed of. Not by Pastor Collins alone, but by my own willingness to believe a lie because it was easier than facing the truth. One Sunday, after the service, I approached Elder Thomas. My hands were shaking. My voice is barely steady. "Can I talk to you?" I asked. He nodded, his eyes kind. "Of course, sister." We sat in the back of the gym, and I told him everything. I told him about Greater Covenant, about the seed offerings, about the promises that never came. And then I told him about what I saw when I died. The darkness, the heat, the pastors, the souls, the voice. I expected him to look at me like I was crazy. But he did not. He just nodded slowly, his face somber. "The Lord has given you a burden," he said quietly. "A hard one, but a necessary one. I do not know what to do with it," I admitted, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I do not know how to tell people. They will not believe me." "Some will not," he said. "But some will, and those are the ones the Lord is sending you to." He prayed for me that day. And he told me something I will never forget. "Do not carry this alone, sister. Share your testimony, speak the truth, and trust that God will use it." So I did. I started small. I shared my story with a few women at the church. I told them what I had seen, what I had learned, and to my surprise, they did not reject me. They listened. Some cried, some nodded, and one woman, a single mother like me, grabbed my hand and said, "I needed to hear this. I have been giving my rent money to my church, thinking God was going to bless me. But I have been evicted twice." Her words broke my heart, because I realized I was not the only one. There were thousands, maybe millions, of people trapped in the same cycle I had been in. Giving what they did not have, believing promises that were never made by God, chasing a gospel that led them further from the cross, not closer to it. I started speaking at small gatherings, women's groups, Bible studies, anywhere someone would listen. I did not have a platform. I did not have a stage. I just had my story. And God used it. People started reaching out to me. Women who had left prosperity churches but felt guilty. Men who had gone into debt believing their pastor's promises. Parents who had sacrificed for their children because they thought God was testing their faith. One woman called me in tears. Her name was Sandra. She told me she had given her last $3,000 to her church because the pastor said it would break a generational curse. But now her car had been repossessed, and she could not get to work. "I do not know what to do," she sobbed. "I thought I was doing the right thing." I sat on the phone with her for over an hour. I did not give her easy answers. I did not tell her everything would be okay. I just told her the truth. "God never asked you to give money you did not have," I said gently. "He asks for your heart, not your wallet." And the gospel is not about what you can give to get something back. It is about what Jesus already gave. Everything. On the cross. She cried harder. But this time, it was different. It was the kind of crying that comes when truth finally breaks through. She left that church. She started reading her Bible. And months later, she sent me a message that said, "I am free. For the first time in years, I am free." That is when I realized the weight I was carrying was not a burden. It was a calling. God had let me see the consequences of the prosperity gospel, not to condemn me, but to equip me. To give me a message that could save others from walking the same path I had walked. From ending up in the same place I had seen. I started writing my testimony down. I posted it online. I did not expect anyone to read it. But within days, thousands of people had shared it. Messages flooded my inbox. People from all over the country, all over the world, telling me they had experienced the same thing. That they had been manipulated. That they had given until they had nothing left. That they were finally waking up. And some of them were angry. Angry at their pastors. Angry at the church. Angry at God. But I understood that anger. Because I had felt it too. So I told them what Elder Thomas had told me. Your anger is valid, but do not let it keep you from the real Jesus. The one who never lied to you. The one who never promised you wealth. The one who promised you himself. And that is enough. I shared scripture with them. Not the ones Pastor Collins used, but the ones that revealed the heart of God. Matthew chapter 11 verse 28 through 30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. John chapter 10 verse 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Not abundant bank accounts. Abundant life, peace, joy, purpose, relationship with Him. James chapter 1 verse 27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. The gospel was never about getting. It was about giving. Giving yourself, your life, your will, and in return, you did not get mansions and cars. You got Him, and He was enough. I look back now, 2 years later, and I see how far God has brought me. I still live simply. I still work. I still struggle sometimes. But I am not chasing breakthroughs anymore. I am chasing Him, and that has made all the difference. My daughters see it too. They see a mother who prays, who reads her Bible, who does not live in desperation but in trust. And that is the greatest miracle of all. I do not know what your story is. I do not know what gospel you have been following. But if you are watching this, and something inside you is stirring, pay attention to that. That is the Holy Spirit. That is God trying to get your attention. Do not ignore it. Do not wait until it is too late. Examine your heart today. Ask yourself, am I following Jesus, or am I following a promise? Am I serving God, or am I serving my desperation? The gospel of Jesus Christ is not about what you can get. It is about what He already gave. His life, for yours. And that is the only seed that ever mattered. If you are still here, thank you. Please subscribe if you want more testimonies like this. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to pray for you tonight. And stay connected. There are more warnings people need to hear.